So what did I miss? What were you guys talking about before I hopped on here?
Oh, just
Oh, I'm not repeating it.
yeah, nothing, nothing too important. Just
That's for the second Patreon.
I see.
You know what I mean? That's for the like even deeper Patreon. If you subscribe for 6 months in a row and you collect and catalog and transcribe all of the Patreon episodes, there will be a secret key. There are instructions embedded in all of those where you get access to the dark web content of the show.
Wow. No bleeps, no cuts.
No, nothing. It's a raw feed into all of our living rooms.
It's buried. It's coordinates to a GPS location, kind of like a geocache.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
But it's in Central Park.
Okay.
In the Sheep's Meadow, and there's a very specific point where we're going to all meet there one day and let's just say rejoice together.
Yeah, the People's Tribunal is being assembled.
That reminded me of I don't know if anything ever came of this or went anywhere, but I used to be really into different types of like graffiti and like street art and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And there's an overlap there, obviously with like hip hop culture, but also like kind of weirdly with like hacker culture, at least like 90s, early 2000s stuff. And there used to be all of these drop points.
Yeah.
In New York City, at least. I know I'm presumably in a lot of other cities where people would get like little USB sticks and then cement them into walls in places so that if you're walking down the street, you probably wouldn't notice it unless you're looking closely, but there would be like a little USB thing hanging out and people would presumably use these spots to exchange information. Why they did it in this manner, I don't know. Was it really just some kind of weird art project? Probably, but there might still be some of those out there with some hidden Eat the Rich episodes exclusives. That's all I'll say.
You mean like the USB drive or the thumb drive was like sticking out of the cement or something, and you could like it would just stay stationary, and you could like plug a laptop into it? I mean, is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Yeah, exactly. Like it would be like, you know, they would find like little nooks and crannies, like places and you know, like I don't know, on the side of a brick building where like the mortar between the bricks had kind of, you know, collapse a little bit, or people would drill into there, then put a little USB stick with the USB portion sticking out, and then cement it in so that there would be that little electronic bit sticking out. And if you were looking closely, it would be obvious. And I think it would, you know, also it was exposed to the elements and stuff. So I don't know how intended these things were for like long-term use or whatever. But, you know, it would be sort of like a collective public storage thing that people would use to communicate with each other in some manner.
Viruses for free, man.
Yeah, you get free viruses by plugging in. Again, yeah. I don't know, like, you have the internet, so I don't know, like, what exactly these were being used for. It was probably some kind of more interesting, like, thought experiment than something that was practically used.
Look, I mean, in fairness, I in like 2011 and stuff, I got really into like NetSec and privacy, which I'm not a computer guy, really. Like I have some basic competency, but I certainly don't, it's above me. But like at some point it's kind of like a philosophical thing, because I think at that time, everybody that kind of understood or grew up with the proto-internet understood that, like most things in capitalism, the internet was becoming consolidated to, you know, more centralized. And so, you know, one thing that was talked about in efforts to combat that was something called the mesh net, which is basically what the internet originally was, which is just completely decentralized. But unfortunately, it would be done over like radio waves and like shortwave radio and shit. But if you have enough of a mesh network together, that you would be able to send things, you know, exchange data outside of the centralized regulated internet.
Right.
You know, and this has happened, that was used, if I'm not mistaken, in Hong Kong during some protest several years back, where the internet was shut down so that they could, in an effort to halt protesters from communicating, but it was a Bluetooth like P2P app that was, if you were close to each other, you could just all be exchanging information like, hey, stormtroopers on this side of Wan Chai or whatever, and we got to go to the other, to fucking Kowloon Bay or whatever the fuck. So yeah, no, there was it's an interesting thought, but aside from that, I'm only on one website every day, so it doesn't really make a difference.
It's interesting because that also was the time of, like, you know, then the eruption of a lot of global protests that in various ways use different internet technologies.
Right,
And it was a
right,
great
right.
outpouring of like, you know, utopian feelings. And I think there was a lot of thought, like you were just saying, Dwight, that kind of constructed this narrative about like, you know, the internet had once been this kind of free space and now it's being like enclosed by these various corporations. I think, you know, to a certain extent that's true. I mean, I was thinking even about that post you did, Chris, this week that was like, there used to be more websites, you know, and now it's
true,
like you
right?
just...
Doesn't it feel that way?
That's why I was thinking about this.
You just go to a couple of them.
Yeah.
But they're also, the other thing about it, and this is my kind of, this is the twist. This is like my pushback against that kind of reading of things, is that from its inception, the internet as a communications tool was deeply, deeply tied to a Cold War infrastructure of like, you know, a heavily central state corporate partnership. And in fact, the main building, which I think still routes like a huge amount of the cables and various, not just attached to the internet, but like all kinds of telecommunication lines. Like one of the main routing places for it is this giant building in downtown Manhattan.
Yeah,
I'm
dude.
trying to remember its exact address, but if you walk by it, it's very
33
notable 'cause it's
Thomas Street, buddy.
yeah, it's a skyscraper with no windows, and the entire thing is just made out of like concrete. And they built it there because in New York City, they built it for two reasons. Because first of all, New York is a focal point for a lot of where those companies were, and a lot of like the undersea cables and stuff that go across the Atlantic like route through there. But they also built it in New York because of that, because they knew in a nuclear exchange with the Soviets, like New York would be a target and it would get hit. So they built that building specifically for the contingency if like the Soviet Union hit New York City with an ICBM, that at least like all of the communication wiring would still be in place. So that way, you know, the defense network and the Pentagon and stuff could still communicate with its various bases and set up a retaliatory strike. And now presumably you'd still have Twitter. So even if New York gets wiped out, you could still listen to Eat the Rich podcast.com/Patreon.
While we're in our underground bunkers.
Trying to remember to do the plug.
Well, yeah, that's good that you brought that up. That's actually the first time that any of us have remembered to plug that on the show. Well, unfortunately, this is a Patreon episode. Yeah.
So pirate the show, play this for your friends.
So if you're hearing this, you know, from a pirated feed that you got off one of the fucking savages from the subreddit, yeah, please, you know,
If you pirate the show, you're a
you do have the
cop.
option of paying for this.
I want to do this full time, so please, like, allow me to live my dream. Shane, I will do something a little bit dangerous here.
Yeah, let's go.
And wade into architecture Twitter for a second.
Yeah, let's go.
Say that 33 Thomas Street is an excellent example of what I hold in my heart very dear as absolutely one of my favorite architectural styles, which is brutalism.
Oh, I love brutalism.
Yeah,
I love brutalism.
No, I really do. There's quite a bit of it in San Francisco that I was a fan of. In fact, I think it's the is it the Balboa Park BART station? It's not Balboa Park. It's Glen Park. The Glen Park BART station is a really cool example of brutalism. In fact, just yesterday I was looking at. I wish I'd retweeted it. There's a very nice thread of various brutalist structures, like some of them in France, I believe, and it was really cool.
Oh, I love it.
I'm actually looking at 33 Thomas Street right now. I like it.
Yeah, dude.
On the topic of brutalism, one of the most interesting buildings I was really happy to get a chance to look at. I'm going to send you guys a picture of it right now. When I was like shopping around different PhD programs, one of the ones was I got into the comms department at UCSD. That's University of California, San Diego. And so I took a trip out there, and they have this unbelievably beautiful library.
Oh, wow.
That is like a peak of brutalist architecture. I forget who designed it.
UCSD library?
It's in the DM.
Yeah, University of California, San Diego. Yeah, I just sent it to you guys, but you can also look it up. Look it up at home for those listening. It's an unbelievably
that's absolutely stunning.
Beautiful library.
Yeah. Oh,
I went inside and stuff it, and It's a really nice campus in general too, but the thing that kind of made me just like intrinsically feel a little strange, and this might be just a feature in general of like spaces in California. That was like one of the only times in my life I've ever been out that far west. But like they were building all of these new like dormitory facilities, because I guess, you know, it's a huge school and they're expanding, and like, you know, it's like, I mean, the campus is massive. I mean, it goes for like miles, and when you leave like the area where, you know, they have all the classrooms and research facilities and stuff, and then you walk this like long way to like where they start having these new you know, housing facilities, and they're all built, and I guess since they're relatively new, it just looks like a pop-up city or something.
Sure.
Because they have to build the dorm stuff, then they have to build like rec spaces, then they build like grocery stores and all the other supplementary things, and it just reminded me in the design of like in like the fucking 40s and 50s in like places like Los Alamos, when the government would be like, we have to build like a whole city in the desert so we can test the effects of radiation on children or whatever. You know, they would build these giant facilities in like a few days, and there was just something kind of weirdly like sterile about it. I don't know. It made me. I
love
would
it,
imagine that's what suburbia is like.
Well, I'll tell you what. No, you know, I think that this is something I noticed when I lived in California, is that, you know, prior to going out west, like every town, every city I'd ever lived in or visited, like, you know, I mean, it's been around for a couple hundred years. You know what I'm saying? That then like I lived in Santa Rosa, California, and like, yeah, the entire town, like the downtown, I mean, it's like from the 40s. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And like you go downtown, and yeah, and like the whole like what you would call downtown just had like the vibe of like a pop-up like outdoor shopping mall. It was just like it felt like it was like the entire thing was just built all at once, like almost like a strip mall would be.
Right.
It's like fucking Hill Valley Estates in Back to the Future. You know, well, that's like always something that fascinated me about the American West, and that's why I always dug like at westerns and shit like that. That's all it was. It was just like these strips of towns, just like these little fucking towns.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. Like, I haven't gotten a chance to travel as much as I'd like. You know, I'm gonna restate that. I don't really like traveling.
Oh, I love it, dude. It's literally like my favorite thing.
I don't like going anywhere. I like going from my bedroom to my office, which is in my apartment. Like, I don't want to go outside. But, like, the few times that I've been to other cities, especially, like, you know, I went to Berlin when I was in my early 20s. It was really my only traveling to, like, Europe or whatever. But, like, you know, it is really fascinating when you go to a place that has been there for, like, thousands of years.
Oh, yeah. No, that I can't even imagine.
It's so wild.
Because I've never left the country.
You said you never left the country?
I've never left the United States. No, so yeah, so
you're
like
fine.
I can imagine, like, you know, like being in a city here in the United States, it's got like 300 or 400 years of history. I can't imagine being someplace like Paris or London or Rome that's, you know, stood for a fucking millennium.
Yeah, too long. It's too long. There's no need for it. But I think seriously too, there is something there. Like, obviously, living in a space, you know, you're only going to be influenced so much by that, and you know, what the conditions are of it now and what it's like now. But it's just interesting to think that there are those locations in a lot of other places in the world where humans have habitated in the same area for so long, and there are still like kind of architectural memories of that. Like in Berlin, there's like a medieval quarter, although a lot of Berlin was also destroyed during the Second World War, so there is a lot of like new stuff there.
It's their fault for being communists.
That just made me. There's actually a lot of kick-ass Soviet monuments in Berlin.
Yeah, man.
The best one is in the middle of the city. There's like a giant Soviet war memorial that the Russians built right after the war. It's like this huge amphitheater, like neoclassical amphitheater thing, where it's flanked on the sides by two giant T-34 tanks. Then, like, these two giant Russian artillery pieces. And then in the very center, there's, like, a 30 or 40-foot bronze statue of, like, a Soviet soldier who just looks, like, really fucking angry. And he's staring right down, and he has his hand out in your face. So when you stand under it, you just feel, like, conquered.
Yeah.
And, like, the most interesting thing about the fucking memorial is that it's in Russian.
Wow.
Like, it's not in German. Like, they built it as a huge, like, fuck you. I mean, again, for anybody who's listening to, like, you know, recap, they were the Nazis. Like, so they kind of... You know, it was good that the Soviet Red Army like took Berlin and did that. But like, and interestingly too, there in Berlin, a lot of the older buildings that are still there, like especially the older museums and things, they have still like bullet holes and like cracks and stuff in them. Like the city has deliberately left as like a memorial. Like to be like, you know, this is part of our history and we have to recognize and reckon with, you know, the sins of our fathers, basically. And be like, we have to like collectively take responsibility for it, which is a really interesting thing that we just don't do at all in the United States.
No, hell no, brother.
There is
Spray and
zero
pray.
equivalent of that.
Empty the chamber, let God decide.
Well, I'll tell you one thing that I found really interesting on that topic, and I don't know if you remember, I brought this up. I mentioned this the last time that we were hanging out in the city, but you know, in the city of Sarajevo, there's something called Sarajevo roses, which were like, you know, like places, like spots on the sidewalk, spots on the street where, you know, during the siege of Sarajevo, like a mortar shell had hit and left this shrapnel or whatever in the sidewalk there, and like instead of repairing these, they like filled them with red dye. So that's and they call them a Sarajevo rose. You can see like all the places during the siege where the mortars hit. Yeah, and like you can see all the exact spots, and they're filled with this red dye that like, you know, fills in all the gaps and everything. It's pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting to look at. I'll tell you, that's someplace I would really like to go. Speaking of brutalist architecture, man,
yeah,
I'm really into the Yugoslavian brutalist stuff.
Same.
I'll tell you, I mean, whenever I get a chance to go to Europe, man, that's someplace I really want to visit.
You just made me think, speaking of the Balkans, and I forget, I might have told you guys this, but you know, in Albania...
This is not the first time we've heard you say, speaking of the Balkans.
Yeah, I have a deep fascination with the Balkans myself.
But in Albania, right, which also was is a former socialist state, they the leader of Albania, who's Enver Hoxha, it was one of the only European socialist states that broke away from the Soviet orbit and like joined the Chinese orbit during the Sino-Soviet split.
Right.
Wow.
But then when China reformed after the death of Mao, and you know, Deng took over, and then you know, they relaxed things, became more of a quasi market socialist capitalist state or whatever, and Hoxha then like broke from them again and was like, we're the only, like, Albania is now the true leader of world revolution because like all the other countries have become revisionist. So they were effectively, even though they were, you know, next to the socialist bloc, they were like effectively isolated, and there was a deep paranoia that Hoxha had that the Soviet Union was going to invade, so he built all these bunkers. And so, but like they went crazy with it. Like it was like really like pathological. Like there's now, and most of them are still around. There are almost 200,000 bunkers.
Oh, don't they? What? Isn't there a specific name for these? Like some kind of pillbox or something?
What the fuck?
Yeah, they're sometimes they're called like Hoxha's bunkers or something because they're very associated with that era. But like, I pulled it up here on Wikipedia. There's about 6 of them for every square kilometer.
Whoa. What?
Yeah, and
Wow, man.
and I want to say, let me look this up. I think like the population of Albania is like, you know, maybe like 2 or 3 million people. So it's like one bunker for every, you know, 10 people or something is in the country. It's like insane. They built them all over the place because he had this idea, we're gonna have to defend the country in this protracted people's war against an invasion by the Soviet Union. So of course now they're just like all either in disrepair, but a lot of them have been renovated into like little cafes or little museums or little like spaces of like art house things. So it's like this kind of very militaristic, brutalist, weird concrete pillbox thing that's in the ground everywhere in Albania, but people have now turned them into a variety of different things, little memorials and things.
Yeah, but
Interesting.
But we have like dentist offices that look like fucking dominoes. So
yeah.
who's to say which one's better?
Yeah, and actually, in Richmond, actually, I brought this up on the show once before. In Richmond, we have a very impressive collection of locations that used to be Whataburgers, which are now, tattoo shops and the Subways and
fucking
Domino's
insane.
and stuff.
It's
No, but
pretty
I tell you,
bleak,
dude,
man.
I love to travel, man. I would really like to make it over to Europe. I like traveling just for traveling's sake. I mean, as you guys know, I mean, I spent a couple years just hitchhiking. You know, I mean, I just love to travel. I just love going from place to place, and I love that wandering feeling. I really enjoyed like sort of the aimless feeling, you know, and the adventure of not necessarily knowing where you're going to be day to day, man. It's really exciting.
That's got to be fucking incredible. That's got to be incredible.
You know, I always wanted to do it. I think that like as a fucking high school kid, I listened to too goddamn much Grateful Dead and like got way too much into Jack Kerouac. And then I just
Yes.
I was in my mid-20s, and then I was at a situation in my life where like I had the opportunity to do it, and I was like, well, if I don't do it now, I've always wanted to do it. If I don't do it now, when am I ever going to do it? So I just fucking went for it.
Incredible.
Fun times, man.
It's weird out there in America.
No regrets. No regrets. It's the way I thought about it is the last the frontier is closed. Like there's no like it is the last like sort of great American adventure that you can have is hitchhiking cross country. Highly recommend it. If anybody feels like utterly throwing their life away, man, it's great.
I don't know.
Can't recommend it highly enough, man.
It's like a weird thing to reckon with, maybe, you know, because I feel, you know, especially now, just so like beaten down by the apparatus of capitalism and shit. Like there's so little like romance in our lives.
Sure.
I
Sure.
don't know really how to articulate it, but it's just like I haven't felt that sense of adventure in a while, except, well, yeah, like I haven't felt that sense of adventure in a while because we're so tethered to our routines because we have to out of self-preservation and the preservation of our stations under the boot of capitalism and stuff, and to our employers and stuff. The one time that I did feel a little bit of like kind of like excitement and romance and not really knowing what I was going to doing was this morning when I bought my ticket to the Milwaukee to the DNC.
Yeah, man, we're going, dude.
Are we going? I guess we're going.
I'm going, man. I was this morning. I was just like, fuck it.
All right.
Something's gonna happen. Let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
I'm interested in seeing and observing what may occur.
Yeah, sure.
As a result,
You're listening to this in court right now as we're on trial as part of the Milwaukee 10. This is now being distributed as evidence of premeditation to start a riot.
Play it for the jury.
Oh no. God.
Future Shane, if you're listening to this in the defendant's box at this moment, I just want to say I hope you figured out how the semaphores work in that video game you've been playing.
Wait. You're probably wondering how I got here.
No, I tell you, and we talked about this a bit with Brett and Brian last week, but man, even honestly, dude, just for obviously the DNC is more important, but just for the novelty and the fun of it, man, the one I really want to hit up is the RNC.
Yeah, that could be fun.
Oh, dude, yeah. Because who's there? It's just grifters. Like, there's nothing they have to
Hell
do.
yeah.
They don't have
Hell
to do
yeah.
anything. There's nothing they need to accomplish. So it's just going to be like, remember that, one of my favorite movies that's not talked about enough, which I think is from like 87, is Dragnet with Dan Aykroyd and Tom Hanks.
I don't think I ever saw that.
There's a scene in it where it's like they're battling this kind of like psycho, like pagan underground ring of crime, and they're literally called Pagan. PAGAN stands for People Against Goodness and Normalcy.
They're not like biker pagans.
No. They're like psycho, like they're doing like pills and sacrificing goats and shit. That's what I imagine.
That doesn't
the
sound
RNC.
too far off from the biker pagans, but go on.
Perhaps. If I'm being really honest, and I'm showing my colors here, I'm not particularly familiar with the biker pagans, but that's what I imagine.
Either, but I do. There's this out in California, man. There's quite a number of Hell's Angels, man. I definitely knew some bikers.
Nice. I thought it was really cool and brave of Trump to announce that they were going to hold the RNC in Carcosa.
They got to pick the new Yellow King, man.
That's right.
I mean, I was just going to say I was at the DNC in 2016.
Oh, were you?
Yeah. I mean, it was in Philadelphia. That was actually the first time I went to Philadelphia. Now I live here.
Wow.
No shit,
Unrelated
man.
events. Yeah.
What was that
I
like?
was here. I mean, it was relatively uneventful. You know, I mean, obviously there were huge crowds of people. There were like all shades of the left were there. For all variety of reasons. There was obviously a large contingent of people who had showed up, I guess, in preparation to, you know, make some kind of stand or something with Sanders, although he obviously conceded at the convention. And then there were all kinds of other groups, you know, ranging from the stupidly benign to the stupidly pain in my ass. The funniest story I have from it is there was this moment when, in the middle of the day, because there were like events going on all day, different rallies, you know, people were speaking, variety of different activists, again, from a number of different quarters. And one of the groups that was there were the Revcoms, who are the Bob Avakian.
Okay. Oh, absolutely. Some of my favorites, man.
Yeah, and I've kind of had some sort of history with them, stretching back to all the way to my high school, because they used to send people out there to recruit.
Of course, every fucking protest of any kind, especially in the New York area.
And then weirdly, when I was in my 20s and I worked at this like production rental place, I would like I was like a liaison for like they had a store in New York City called Revolution Books where they do like book talks. So I'd like help them out with their like speaker setup and stuff for that. I'm not sympathetic to them, and if that's unclear.
Actually, I don't know if you remember the first night the three of us met. We had a pretty lengthy conversation about Avakian and the Revcoms.
Jesus, really?
So anyway, just to finish it, at the DNC, they were there, and you know they're like all dressed like they're in the Khmer Rouge, which to be fair I do as well, but for other reasons. And so they're all standing there. And, you know, they have, like, their red flag. They're standing in their, like, quasi-formation. And they're doing this, like, kind of ridiculous marching in place kind of thing. Where, like, they're trying to have... It's, like, the aesthetic ritual of, like, a well-disciplined army kind of thing. You know, like, that shows how, like, militant we are. But they weren't very good at it. So it's like very laughable, you know, like they're not like in lockstep and stuff. Anyway, so there was in the general area where a lot of people were aggregating in like Center City, Philadelphia, there's this church there, which I think is some kind of non-denominational church or like one of the Christian humanist churches or whatever, but they had opened their doors and were basically like, this is a safe space for activists throughout the day to come and like just chill out for a little bit. They'd provided water and food and a few other supplies and stuff. I think they had like a med station set up in there. So it was like very nice of them to have opened their doors and do this. And at some point, some other guy showed up in the crowd who was like one of those guys who has the giant fucking sign, like an insane right-wing religious nut job he has one of those signs where it's like a list of everybody who's going to hell.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
And it lists,
yeah,
you've seen it online, you know, where it says like gamers, masturbators, and that kind of thing. So he showed up and he had like a megaphone and he was condemning everybody as godless communists or whatever. And so he went up to the church, and if I recall correctly, the church had on the outside of it, like it was either like a rainbow flag or on their like sign outside some kind of statement in solidarity with LGBTQ people. And it was like, this is a safe space and safe environment for them, and we love all of our brothers and sisters or whatever. And so this guy like gravitated to the church and he's like screaming at it, right? And so the like Revcom group, which is like off to the side, I guess, catches wind of this, and like I see their like commandant or whatever like start barking orders at them, going like, about face. And so they do this like ridiculous LARPy march over, and they create like a human wall separating this guy from the church.
Wow.
And so, and you know, they're all like locked in arms, and it was one of the most bizarre things I'd ever seen. Because again, they're ostensibly like militant, Maoist, you know, anti-religious communists, and they're defending a church against this insane right-wing nut job, and like shouting back at him in this insane, you know, garbled legalese, like you are the petite bourgeois counter-revolutionary force of, you know, you are nothing but a paper tiger, sir. And he's shouting back that they're going to hell.
Oh, God.
And, it was so fucking funny, dude. I was laughing so hard. It was really a strange scene.
Oh no, what are we gonna see in Milwaukee?
And then Bernie walked by, not there, but I saw him later in the day, and I shouted out to him. I was like, "Go get him!" And he like raised his fist at me, and I thought that was cool.
Good.
Yeah, all right, sure. I have to go talk to the Bob Avakian very briefly before I take the stage.
Gotta get my orders.
My marching orders, all the way from Paris, where he's hiding out from the CIA for some reason.
So here's, I mean, this may be dipping into conspiracy quite a bit, but is Bob Avakian even alive?
I don't know.
Because I'm not sure I'm convinced.
Yeah,
I can't think of the last video I've seen from him. I mean, you know, probably someone's going to fact check this and just go on YouTube and look up Bob Avakian 2020 and find something from recently. But, you know, don't do that. I certainly haven't fact checked it.
Nobody do anything about Bob Avakian.
It doesn't matter. It's so weird. Like, I understand the paranoia in the height of, like, maybe in the 1970s when there were a lot of, like, outward political killings. But the idea to remain there for decades and with the assumption that you're going to get politically assassinated is also, I think, this kind of inverted narcissism.
The whole thing is, he's fundamentally narcissistic. You know, I mean, trying to sort of this very cult of personality type thing to it, and to, like, you know, assert himself as this figurehead of a movement.
Just to cover our bases, if you are listening to this Patreon episode because you contribute and you like Bob Avakian, or you're an adherent, or you're a member of the party, and you're feeling kind of some mixed feelings about what we're saying about him, I would just instruct you to look up the Trump gif of him going bye-bye, just to get a sense of, I don't care. Don't DM any of us about it. I don't give a shit. It's crazy. It's delusional. These are crazy people.
That's fine.
I do love a good crank, man. I love.
I mean,
cranks.
it's funny.
Yeah.
It's funny for sure. But yeah, it's very cranky and strange.
I'll tell you who we have a lot of here, which is very odd. I'm not sure why we have such a concentration of them here. But I see a lot of the Lyndon LaRouche people. We have we have quite a bit
Lord
of those here.
Lord have fucking mercy.
What, on Long Island?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. When I used to live up in the North Shore, like in the Smithtown area, I used to see them a lot. They used to do like demonstrations at the post office and stuff. They used to have be there with their signs and handing out pamphlets and stuff. And I used to see them on the side of the road sometimes. I've talked to them a few times.
What
They're
happens,
fascinating.
man?
They're fascinating people because what's funny is that they have the ability to trick you because if you don't really know what their deal is, you'll see them with these anti-war, anti-imperialist signs or whatever, and then you talk to them and it's like, oh, okay, so no, you're anti-war because of the Jews or whatever. You think it's the Jews?
No, it's the Venetians.
Yeah, and the royal family. Yeah.
I used to listen. Okay, the very first podcast I listened to way back in 2012, 2013 was I literally it's so cringy to think about it now, but I opened up a podcast search app and I typed in Revolution just to see, and I found this podcast called Peace Revolution, which did these 12-hour long episodes.
What?
That were fucking, mostly it would be a collection of a variety of lectures or readings from books, and then this guy would sort of narrate and weave in between all of them. And the first episode I had, it was a bunch of readings from Foucault and these other postmodernists and stuff, and I thought, oh, this is cool. And at the time I had I was working fucking 3 different jobs, and I was on a night shift, so I needed something to stay awake. And I'll just say also, there was something else I was doing to stay awake that aided my ability to listen to a 12-hour podcast.
Yes, deep breathing and yoga, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Meditation and Earl Grey tea.
Yes, exactly.
And so anyway, I listened to this for a while, and of course, because of the length of the episodes, they'd only come out every so often, and you'd have a long time to listen, and you'd go back and re-listen to them, and sometimes they would have little clips from history documentaries and stuff, and I thought, oh, this is kind of interesting and compelling. And they had this one episode that was how the British Empire is the root of imperialism in the world. I was like, oh, this is interesting. And it was a bunch of different historical things about the British. And then eventually it occurred to me, and I realized this is a Lyndon LaRouche podcast. Some fucking whack out libertarian guy puts this together. And I listened to this 2.5-hour lecture by one of LaRouche's surrogates about Massini's Human Zoo. and it was like this long it was like from the 90s or something, and it was this long explanation about how like the British Empire in the 19th century like created the idea of like ethno-nationalism to like stir up shit and like start the First World War and the Second World War. But the reason they did that is it all goes back to like the 12th century in the split in like Venice between like followers of Plato and followers of Aristotle. And I forget who was the good ones and who are the evil ones, but one of them like made their way into the British royal family and has corrupted it ever since for hundreds of years. And I thought, wow, that's pretty, pretty good stuff.
Shane.
I mean, where's the lie? Where's the lie?
Where's the lie? It's the Greek Mountbatten.
It is impressive when you think about LaRouche and like how someone like that was able to like be a complete crank nutjob like that and distribute his ideas and like build this movement around him like pre-internet. It's like fascinating because like that's a guy who would just like nowadays would just be a lunatic on Twitter,
right? Yeah.
But like and I think about that. I'll tell you who I really think about that with is the Dr. Bronner's soap.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
What's up with that? Because I love the soap. I used it today.
It's
What's
soap,
going on with that?
He's a crank, man. Significantly, less harmful crank than LaRouche was. But no, it's fascinating. It's like this is just like that is a born poster right there. Just born too soon, man. It's like back in the day before Twitter, when all you could do if you were a crank and you wanted to get your like insane screed out there for the world to see is like just start a soap company and just put your shit all over, like fill every usable space on the bottle with your shit. It's fucking cool.
Chris, if you had been born like 20 years earlier, there could have been a chance. Fuck, I thought it was just, it's weird because like I thought the bottles were just like eccentric writing. It was like some cutesy shit or whatever. And then I remember like looking one day and it said something about the Jesus or the church or something like that. And I was just like, that's odd.
Yeah, Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, all one.
That's odd.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, he has like some grand unifying theory about like all religions is one or something. I'm not sure. I mean, he's like I said, he seems harmless.
I like the peppermint.
Oh, that's the soap, man. That's what I use. It's best soap. Literally the best soap.
It's a very, very good soap.
The eucalyptus one is good as well.
This episode brought to you by
Our new sponsor, Dr. Bronner's soap.
Hashtag ad.
Speaking of soap, somebody's got to really clean up the Democratic Party.
Oh, God. That's what we're gonna scream before we march into the gates in Milwaukee.
So just so we're clear, everybody that's listening to this, we're recording this episode. It's Monday, the night before Super Tuesday. Everything's looking good.
Man.
I mean, I will allow the space for you guys to articulate how you're feeling. We haven't talked too much today about it, or at least I haven't been privy to the conversation. I think it's fine.
No, I was saying the same. I was saying the same thing last night. I think it's it's not ideal, but I mean like
right.
I mean like we all to put it in perspective, like we only had a very short amount of time where Bernie was the clear front runner. You know what I'm saying? Like
right.
like a month ago or a little over a month ago. I mean it was Biden in the lead for nearly a year. So this is not unexpected. I mean this is what until like the past few weeks where I had this like little sliver of hope where like, well, holy shit, Biden shit the bed, fucking Bernie's gonna sweep everything. I mean that was a very good but fleeting few weeks of optimism. But I don't. It's not over. It's not over. We're not out of the running.
Also, the results from yesterday and are still coming today, especially like vis-a-vis California.
Yeah.
Which probably won't even be shaken out by the time that this episode gets released. Like, I mean, I'm just looking at it now, and they have 87% reporting. Bernie got 33.6% of the vote. Biden got 24.9%, and then nobody else is viable.
Yeah, Bloomberg and Warren got under 15.
The delegate split right now is 135 to Bernie and 83 to Biden, which is like a huge differential, and it's probably only going to increase as they continue, because I don't even think that's like about half the delegates. I think it's like 400 delegates or something from California, or slightly more than that. So in terms of that, I mean, like winning the biggest state,
right.
Isn't it? It's the biggest state in the country, right?
Yeah, by population, for sure.
Yeah. In population and delegates, for sure.
We won pretty handily there, and if I recall, in 2016, Bernie did not win there.
No.
So I mean, showing that's that's present. I think that's a really good sign. I mean, it's going to be probably pretty close as we go throughout, and that means like it's going to be a lot of hard work. I think a lot of the reason why there was so much doom and stuff today is that, like you were saying, Chris, there was this weird perception that, like, oh, he's just going to run away with it. We're not going to have to do any work.
Yeah.
Which is, like, obviously that would be nice to a certain extent. But the reality is, even if he does win handily, like, we all have to do a lot of work, like, in a variety of different ways. And so the idea that it was going to be easy or just, like, handed to him, like, obviously that's not the case. It's going to be a bitter fight. I'm still very confident that, and I've maintained confidence, and if this is not the case later on, you can all call me a fucking idiot or whatever.
Well, we gotta be optimistic, man. We don't have a choice. Taking the black pill does fucking nothing for anybody.
Yes.
As much as certainly as much as anybody else, I'm certainly guilty of joking about it. But I mean, nihilism and pessimism, it's not going to help anything right now. I mean, I think at worst, realistically, we've lost a little bit of our momentum. But I mean, that just means that, like, between now and Michigan, between now and the next fucking Ohio, whenever the next primary is, I mean, if you're knocking doors, knock more doors. If you're making phone calls, make more phone calls. Text, donate to the campaign if you're able to. I mean, this is, if whatever you were doing, as far as working towards this movement, double down on it. And if you weren't doing anything, consider it. This is our shot.
Listen, man, I mean, what was hard for me to kind of like reconcile, and maybe this is just because like I was having a bad day or whatever, but like what's weird is that like Bernie Sanders, it's hard for like libs and conservatives to like not look at things in terms of in terms of identity politics.
Yes.
And so when they look at Bernie Sanders, they're just like, why would you vote for that guy? And ostensibly the people that like would have that viewpoint don't really have their material conditions move either one way or the other based off of whether or not it's a Democrat or Republican, or they do, but they're just not that passionate enough or interested enough to do anything about it, whatever.
Well, even the people that have those viewpoints are full of shit, and they're hypocrites because they've been saying no more old white men for fucking the past 5 years, and now they want to hand it to Joe Biden.
Exactly.
Did you watch his his victory speech last night in LA? Where like the first thing that was so funny, and I mean it was so bizarre. Me and Carrie were watching it in bed. We did a double take when he mistook his sister for his wife and vice versa.
By the way, it's my little sister Valerie, and I'm Jill's husband. Oh no, this is you switched on me. This is my wife. This is my sister. They switched on me.
Amazing. And then after that, he started talking, and he was doing that like kind of faux angry yelling thing, and he just forgot what he was saying mid-sentence. And I try to avoid some of this speculation.
Please speculate
in general for a number of reasons, but Chris, as our chief speculation correspondent, maybe you could weigh in on this. The more I've seen Biden, especially in the last round of debates, and then like last night, he really seems to have mush mouth. And by that, I mean, like, that's a very specific thing that, like, obviously it can happen just because you're old, but I've noticed it also happen in people who are, like, either, like, alcoholics or on, like, prescription drugs, generally, like, sort of downers and things, where you lose your mouth a little bit, and when you're talking, your words kind of fall in on each other.
No, he certainly seems, some kind of medicated in the opposite way that Trump is,
Right.
Here's the thing. I mean, Biden clearly, as we all know, it's a fucking significant cognitive decline,
100%, dude.
And like now that here's what people are forgetting. Like now that like he's the supposed front runner or whatever, and he's got the fucking. I love that they're trying to portray him as like some sort of underdog as well. But like now they're trying to all the spotlights on him, and he's got this momentum and blah 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 blah. He doesn't do well with the spotlight on him. Like he consistently shits the bed every time. Like he sucks shit at running for president, and like the more good, like if you're gonna put him back in the spotlight 24/7, good, because the more times that the fucking camera is on him, the more times he has the ability to look like a fucking idiot and an incompetent old man.
It's between Biden and Bernie at this point, right? I mean,
of course,
Bloomberg. Fucking
get him out of here.
Goodbye.
Loser. Bye-bye.
Buttigieg sold his fucking soul to the devil.
Bye-bye.
Amy Klobuchar, who gives a fuck? I mean,
bye-bye.
I don't really want to like wade into the conversation about Warren because I don't know, everybody was split today. People were just like, the fucking traitor, like get, you split the vote, fuck off. And some people were just like, I think it's kind of like the fucking Pod Save America guys. They were like, so everybody that's trying to come down on Elizabeth Warren for running the campaign that she is, excuse me, she's running for president, and the way that you win the presidency is by winning votes. So anybody that wants to say that she should just drop out to consolidate behind Bernie needs to remember you need to actually win this election. That's my Pod Save America guy.
No, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. By the way, what you reminded me of, did you see that t-shirt that somebody made that was for sale? It was said had the picture of Elizabeth Warren and it said she's electable if you fucking vote for her.
Yeah.
I always want to buy one of those just as what a relic of this time and place.
Yeah. So, but it's just what's fascinating to me is just watching the DNC, watching the Democratic establishment try to fuck Bernie out of this election. It's always a battle of resources, and we are up against the most entrenched working class in history. And even then, to see a movement like, people behind Bernie, the working class, a de facto labor movement behind Bernie, to try to fight for fucking scraps. I mean, and I tweeted this morning at the risk of starting to get a little bit spicy, and I think that anybody that's listening to the show is just like listening and watching my decline. I said, like, they're going to wish that we had just stopped at a Bernie agenda.
Yeah.
For the people that I talk to in my life or whatever that are living in a fucking bubble, like, I want to say to them, like, do you have any fucking idea how bleak it is out there?
Yeah.
How much it fucking sucks to exist in the American workplace? How much it feels horrible to, like, be a pawn of your creditors? Like, it's a fucking, it's broken. And I'm sorry, I have to get this thought out because, like, this has been I've been thinking about this, about the fucking COVID-19, the coronavirus. Like, this is an incredible example of, like, Medicare for all. How do we pay for this? When people get sick, what do? Congress voted to allocate $8 billion to one sickness, and it's an emergency when we could be preventing and keeping our population healthy to not have us spend this amount of money inefficiently on a single thing. It's insane. I mean, for the record, how many people die of heart disease every year? Let alone the cases of coronavirus. And more so, like, one of the things that they say as saying, like, what can you do to stave this off is live a generally healthy lifestyle. And do they have any fucking idea how deleterious chronic stress is to your immune system? The virus affects people mainly that are immunodeficient and have bad pulmonary issues. Well, we're fucking smoking and vaping and we're feeling like shit and compromising our immune system just to stop from feeling like shit about our shit lives. So fuck off with that. It requires an overhaul of our life to be able to combat things like this in the future. Anything that goes on now is just a fucking Band-Aid. But we need an overhaul of our workplace and our lifestyles in order to accommodate this.
Well, I was going to say, I'm not to the coronavirus stuff, but earlier when you're talking about, like, sort of people living in a bubble and, like, how people perceive, like, what's at stake with the election. I saw a couple of people yesterday, like, kind of like pundit people and stuff saying things along the lines of, like, the reasoning behind voting for Joe Biden is to restore decency to the White House.
Oh yeah, buddy.
And I did a post about it because I was really like, who cares? Like, do you give a shit? Like, who gives a shit about decency of the White House?
That's all they care about.
Or the dignity of the White House.
That's why Trump is so offensive to them, and they can't handle him.
I don't know. I remember, like, I forget if I brought this up on the show, but I remember during 2016 when I was working, one of the people I was working for, she broached a question to me. She was like, are you for, like, Hillary or Bernie? And I was working as, like, a janitor at the time at this place, and so, like, I whatever. For whatever reason, I didn't want to introduce, like, politics into the workspace there, because it was just like, I really just want to do my job and get the amount of money that I get from you guys and, like, go away. Like, I'm not here to, like, have a social interaction. This is not a career advancement opportunity for me, right? This is, like, a job that I had to take for a number of reasons. And anyway, so she asked me, and that particular day, for whatever reason, I decided I was going to get into it. And I was like, I'm for Bernie. And she started talking about, like, the necessity to rally around Hillary, which is, of course, why she asked me the fucking question. Yeah. She was talking about Clinton, and she said, the dangerous thing with Trump and Bernie, we don't know about this too, too. Is like, you know, he's gonna like withdraw from NATO, and like. I was just thinking, like, this person that I was talking to, you know, she's not, like, involved in the, you know, this job had nothing to do, no relationship whatsoever to, like, the fucking military industrial complex. Like, why would you care? Like,
why does
do
it fucking
people
matter
really
anyway?
give a shit? Like, and it's like these weird, like, kind of national signifiers and things of importance where I think, and I do think that to a certain extent it's a generational thing as well as an ideological thing where I think younger people just more accurately perceive that, like, none of this shit matters. Like, I don't give a fuck about NATO. I really don't. I don't care. It has done nothing for me in my life. I don't believe in any of its mission or any of its ideas or any of the things that it's fucking done materially in the world. Like, why should I give a shit? Why do I care if, like, the White House has prestige and pomp and circumstance? I wouldn't give a shit if they bulldozed it and Bernie ran the fucking country out of a one-bedroom apartment. Why would I give a shit?
Are they, I mean,
who cares?
What do they think? Are they going to declare are they going to invoke Article 5 of NATO when fucking on the temperature of the earth when Central Park becomes a fucking aquarium?
Right, exactly. It's a totally meaningless kind of set of these weird national prestige signifiers where I guess if you're so inundated in that or you're so just kind of throughout your life indoctrinated in it and you like watch it on TV and you see the president speaking from, you know, the White House or the, you know, speaking directly from the Oval Office or something, and you know, during the inauguration, right, when everybody gets there and, you know, they have everybody out on the mall and they have the fucking Joint Chiefs of Staff or during the State of the Union when they're in the halls of Congress.
Couldn't give a shit.
You know, people see that and they're like, oh my God, look at the fucking reliefs on the building.
They're all holding their farts. Like, there's no...
Who cares?
There's no... AOC had the fucking right idea. She skipped this State of the Union. Like, who fucking cares?
Yeah, who gives a shit?
Well, it's like the people too, and this always pisses me off whenever I see this. The people that will they'll have like on the one side like the list of like all the Trump scandals or whatever, and then they'll have like, you know, list of Obama scandals, tan suit, latte salute, like that sort of stuff. Like this idea that, like, you know, just because Obama like composed himself with this degree of dignity, you know, and like this sort of, you know, aesthetic respectability, to you know, completely disregard everything that went on, you know, the signing into law, the Bush tax cuts, and the continuation and the expansion of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, extrajudicial murders of U.S. citizens on foreign soil, and the drone strikes, and all this sort of like none of this enters into your mind.
They don't care.
As a scandal, as long as you have this like, you know, cool, seemingly respectable person at the helm of it. And it's like those kind of people, like that is what scares me so much about like the people that like Joe Biden, because the people that like Joe Biden, that is what they long for. Like, as long as we just like back when, like, during the Obama administration everything was fine, as long as we can just get rid of, you know, the bad, rude, vulgar orange man, everything is going to be fine if we can just go back to the era of Obama.
Which is fucking insane, because even on Twitter, even on Twitter's GIF search, there's at least 3 clips of Joe Biden sexually assaulting women in front of cameras, including like the daughter of a senator. It's like Chris Coons, like standing right fucking next to him, smiling like an idiot that doesn't know what to do because his daughter is being fucking assaulted by the head of the party.
You know what I think about so much too is, do you remember shortly after Trump's inauguration, it was one of those, it might have been the Women's March, it was one of those anti-Trump protests or whatever, and do you remember that sign, that very famous sign that people took pictures of and circulated that said, if Hillary had won, we'd all be at brunch right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think about this like every afternoon.
That fucking attitude is what horrifies me.
This is something I've been thinking about, and a good friend of the show came up with this too. Like, people like Biden, people like Schumer and Pelosi, fucking Cuomo, like, it goes to say, you know, the entire conservative establishment as well. They want to be our managers.
Yes.
They want to be our managers.
Obama was this cool technocratic fucking manager of state, man.
And I was thinking about this, especially in the context of coronavirus, where things like the CDC, which every fucking capitalist establishment looks directly at the United States government and says, save us. And all that Trump has done is like erode these extremely important government agencies. Like I was looking into the other day, like for a variety of reasons, like on a nearly every other day basis, go to the website time.gov. Don't ask. But it's the official U.S. clock. So it's like the official time of the United States. And it's like probably based off of some fucking atomic clock in like Colorado Springs or something like that. And it corrects for your latency for your particular connection. So it's fucking fascinating. That is run by a department under the Department of Commerce called the National Institute of Standards and Technology. And this was like a really important thing that had to be created when they had a question like, how much is a kilogram? How long is a meter? Like things that are absolutely fucking essential to our daily life. I don't think people realize like how important these government agencies are to our everyday life, and we're just allowing for the ruling class that now has one of their own in the seat of government, the head of the government, to just erode these things. Like that's the fucking decency that we need. Like we need a governing body to show us to study the fucking virus.
Yeah, but have you thought about it on the other way in terms of like a standardization of weights and measures is actually a removal of choice from the market? Like there should be like, you know, let the market decide how much a pound is. Let the market decide what an inch is. These are things that like I want to have the choice as an American to decide. I don't want you to come, what is it, you say the government is going to come into my house and tell me how much I weigh? I weigh 100 pounds. It's the lightest I'm light as a feather, all right? That's how much I want to weigh, and that's what my scale says that I bought from eattherichpod.com.
It's a merch coming. Merch coming.
/merch.
But yeah.
You can get the Shano scale, the one and only.
Look, but they want to be our managers, and I think like those people, like the lady that you were talking about at that job that you had, like they've just internalized the worst parts of that. And same deal with what you're saying, Chris. Like we could be at brunch right now. I don't want to think about this shit. I don't want to.
Yeah.
That's what like.
Who was the Democratic presidential candidate? I already forgot, the fucking loser that was running last year. Was it Hickenlooper? Was it Swalwell or Ryan? It was one of them that like said, like repeatedly said, like, look, if you elect me president, you're never even gonna think about me. You're gonna forget all about me.
Fucking idiot.
You're gonna go weeks at a time and just never even, you know, you're never even gonna have to worry about it. You're not even gonna know I'm in there.
That's been my same pitch for every time I've tried to become the treasurer of a student organization in my life. You'll never have to worry about it. I got it. I'll take care of it.
I mean, that's the opposite of what I want. I want to see, you know how like in like Union Square or whatever, they have like that debt clock?
Mm-hmm.
That's a time clock, actually.
Okay. Anyway.
It's a Shano
interesting
clock. It says whatever time you want it to say.
No, it's interesting because
we don't have the big government nanny state trying to tell us what time of day it is.
It tells you on either side how many hours have passed in the day and how many hours are left in the day. And that's why in the center it oscillates so quickly, because in the center it's milliseconds.
Well, okay, not the one in Union Square then. Wherever the one where there's like the U.S. debt clock or something. That's some fucking idiot billionaire. Whatever. Like
my apartment.
What I was good. Forget it. I don't remember my point.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was going to say.
I thought it was an interesting bit of New York history. There's a giant clock.
You know, if there's anybody that likes a bit of New York history, it's me. No. I want to think about that, like whoever that candidate was. Like, I want to think about the leader, because it's what I was gonna say was I'm hoping that whoever our leader is that gets elected has a clock like that, but it's just our enemies that are being put in the gulags. That was the long game that I was going for. It was a very low payoff.
What you want is Hola Presidente. Do you guys ever watch that?
No.
That was Hugo Chavez had an hourly TV show every night called Hola Presidente, where he would directly address the people. And one of his favorite things to do on it was sing. He was a big singer. So he would like go to, he would have, they would have like pre-recorded clips or whatever where we'd go out into, the docks of like Caracas or whatever, and he'd like talk to fishermen, and just like mid-sentence he would start crooning.
See, that's what I want, man. I want a nightly special where Bernie sings like fucking If I Had a Hammer or whatever kind of stuff he's into.
It would be nice.
Right? That sounds delightful.
Look, here's what happened today. I'm not proud of it. I was a little under the weather, but I'm trying. I don't want to be too pessimistic, Chris. I appreciate your words, because it is important for us to maintain hope, even though there is an entire apparatus that's working at peak capacity to stop us, the working class, from gaining power. And that's
we don't have a choice. We don't. Frankly, a year ago, I didn't think we were going to be in the position we're in now. I didn't think we were going to be. I'm talking about Bernie. I didn't think he was going to be doing this well.
Yeah,
I really didn't. I've been pleasantly surprised. And there's no, we can't give up hope now.
Think about his own career, right? I mean, if you like him and if he's part of what has attracted you to the movement, I mean, think about how he's like, one of the things we like about him is having been consistent and having fought for all these things for 30 years. And obviously, like a number of horrible things have happened in that time period, but that didn't deter him or stop him or make him think maybe I should give up and just become a grifter and go work for a fucking insurance company or something, or just kind of live for the rest of my life as a private citizen, only then later to be revived by some fucking idiot teenagers and dragged out on Twitter and some phony bullshit non-starter of a thing, so only then they could turn around having been having done nothing and then set up this bullshit institute and then last night tell everybody that now it's over.
It's completely, contrived, anecdote. They're apropos to nothing in real life. It's not based on any sorts of real events or people. Hypothetically, we wouldn't want Bernie to be that.
Oh God.
Yeah, exactly.
We wouldn't want, hypothetically, him to come out and say that, Michael Bloomberg is the best chance of defeating Trump, and then 9 months later, the institute in his name to start tweeting, epic dunks on Bloomberg every day, like we all forgot about that.
Yeah, we wouldn't want people to try to set up something which, in their own words, is going to be a PragerU for the left without the cringe. Like that would be like awful. That would make me lose. If I had even a sliver of interest or faith in those people, that would make me really reconsider anything about them, including their motivations.
Wow. Wow.
You said you wanted to start some shit.
Yeah. Fuck. Oh, wow.
We should market Bernie rolling papers. How hilarious would that be?
Yeah.
That's a fucking good idea.
Gritty smokes fascist rolling papers. Fucking epic.
We could also say we were gonna send those out and then never do it.
We're gonna collect the donations and then we're never gonna send them to anybody.
Yeah, dude, it'll be so cool.
I saw last night. I was at an art gallery opening in Midtown, and I walked past the cigar bar, and like these guys sitting in an enclosed room smoking cigars, and it struck me as the fucking stupidest fucking thing I could imagine, to like smoke what's presumably like a fucking $75 cigar, and your clothes, like the dudes are like wearing suit. They're like business dudes.
I think it's cool.
No, but they can't. They can't.
No.
They can't possibly wear that suit the next day. Like it has to get dry cleaned.
Sure.
And there was a dude that was just like, he just looked like fucking baby Huey. Like he was a baby man. Like he was a large baby man.
Yeah,
and he had on, it was, I'm mad. I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. I'm mad because I envy his happiness, because he was sitting there listening with these like nice headphones on, like clearly like listening to something, just vibing, just himself, chiefing on a big cigar and just enjoying himself. And he's like clearly rich, you know what I'm saying? And I'm just like, man, this guy doesn't give a fuck about anything that's happening around in the world right now, and he is just vibing. Meanwhile, I'm just like outside. It's like that fucking scene in Midnight Cowboy where fucking Buck
Ratso Rizzo is standing outside.
He's standing outside like in the rain, like just like
dying
of fucking tuberculosis or whatever, while John Voight has to goes into this party and shit. Rizzo, not Ratso. That was pretty good.
It's pretty.
That's
Yeah,
not
that is
bad.
good.
It is like my favorite movie.
It's a good one. I wish the lead actor in it could get some kind of medal from the
Oh
president
God.
for his work in that movie.
It's funny. I think we talked about this like whenever a couple weeks ago. Whenever we talked about that medal, but it hasn't left my mind since. I try to imagine Trump watching Midnight Cowboy.
Oh.
It's just a really funny situation for me to imagine.
I thought about that last night when I was at the art show thing, and it was because I remembered your words of saying like Trump is never Trump. I think it was like a two-part tweet. One was like Trump doesn't listen to music, and then you were like Trump has never been moved by or appreciated any one piece of art at all ever.
Ever.
There's no way.
Unimaginable thing. It's impossible.
Shane, you said in an early episode that when you feel down, depressed, and like feeling like the apparatus is too insurmountable to fight, you think about like all the people that have been fighting for a very long time.
Yeah.
And the fight continues, and it continues in different iterations and different generations, generation after generation. And yeah, no, that I thought about your words because I was like this morning, because I fucking woke up at 3 a.m. and then checked all the polls, and I was just like fuck, and then I was awake for like 2 hours, and then I went to bed, and then I woke up feeling like a horse's ass. And then I thought about your words, and I was like, yeah, we got to keep going.
I mean, here's the thing, though. If you're a listener of this show, I probably don't have to remind you of this, but no part of this fight begins or ends with Bernie Sanders. I mean, even
No way.
if the Sanders gets in the White House, the fight's not over. I mean, he's won. It would be nice. It would be a nice step in the right direction, but it's not the only thing that this is all riding on. And like frankly, this is probably a fight that all of us are going to be in for a very long time, probably our entire lives. I mean, nothing is going to happen overnight. There's no quick fix. If nothing changes, if nothing gets better, as this looming crisis of climate change intensifies, the fight's only going to get harder. And I mean, if things aren't moving the way that they need to be moving to for the sake of humanity and for the sake of the future of life on this planet, I mean, things are going to get a lot tougher. The fight's going to get a lot harder, and we're going to have to get a lot more serious.
I've been thinking about that too. I mean, I thought about this over the last week. I was like, am I just like doomed to have this like mindset for the rest of my life? And there's just like this perpetual dissatisfaction and thinking like, but things could be so much better if we just did this and if everybody just did this. And I've been battling that to think like maybe this is just like a perpetual. I'm like Brett was saying from Street Fight, saying on the last episode, like I was just really bad at parties. Like it was just no fun to hang around. And my conclusion my preliminary conclusion is I don't give a shit. Let's fucking do this. Yeah. Like, let's fucking go. We gotta go. We gotta do this.
Yeah.
I've got literally nothing to lose.
Right, yeah. I mean, it's also like, I think you do have to somehow find a way to internally reckon with that sense of doom and despair, and just recognize that if you perceive the world through this ideological lens of the left-wing emancipatory project, like, there's always going to be some element of, unsatisfaction, right? Or like, something you didn't get to accomplish. And a metaphor that I like for this is, and I brought this up, I think, in one of the Patreon episodes we did when we were talking about books, this book by Jodi Dean called The Communist Horizon. And I liked the metaphor that she kind of constructed there with this idea literally of a horizon. And, I mean, again, as I identify with it through that specific ideological filter of calling it communism, but whatever you want to call it, like a hopeful future, a better future, some kind of, progressivism, whatever it is, like it's always a horizon, right? Which means that it's always out there. Like it's not like a location that you get to, right? It's about the struggle that you work towards a better world. And it can always be a better world. And that's what's important to remember and to hold on to that. And as we go through, even if Bernie wins, like, or if he doesn't, like, there's always like there's always going to be some next step. There's always going to be the next thing that has to be done. And part of that too is then continuing to not only think of yourself as like, well, I'm just one person on my own. I'm, what can I do? Part of what you need to do and what we all need to do is take a certain kind of leadership position, not just like in the sense of, taking on additional tasks or taking on, extra work or whatever to work towards that world. But, part of what it is to be a real leader as opposed to like, say, like a boss, like a leader needs to be like inspiring, right? And you need to inspire that hope and that desire and a little bit of that faith in the people around you as well. And so that's something to, keep in mind as we move forward, that it's always going to be kind of far ahead, but that doesn't mean that it's not worth fighting towards.
Yeah, well said.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, no, I needed to hear that, if I'm really honest.
Absolutely, man.
So why don't we do a few Curious Cat questions, since we got some nice submissions here. Interesting. Okay, I'm going to read this. I don't know if it's a good one, but let's... Well,
Okay.
Somebody asks, what does Chris smell like? Well, we already know it's Dr. Bronner's soap.
Peppermint Dr. Brown.
Yeah,
soap.
exactly.
I smell delightful, man. So, if you'd asked me that question about 10 years ago, the answer would have been patchouli.
I love the smell of patchouli, dude.
Yeah, I do too. I still do, but I mean, I wouldn't wear it anymore.
Yeah. All right, here's a good one. My stepmom, as I'm sure many of your viewers' families members do, says that people who are poor are only that way because they can't manage their time wisely enough. Obviously, this is incorrect, and I debated her about it for a while, but she seems to have a pretty firm hold on that belief. Is there anything that you guys can think of that would help me convince this white upper-class woman and people I'll inevitably encounter in the future like her that poor people are actually just being repeatedly fucked over by late-stage capitalism and not just, quote, bad at time or money management? Thanks a ton. I'm also a huge fan of the show. Thank you so much for everything you do. That's very kind. It's very kind.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Look, I mean, I think we've kind of addressed this a bit in this show already, but I think about this shit a lot. I mean, I think what this person is asking is like, what are some rhetorical devices to use when combating this sort of thing? I mean, firstly, they'll never change their viewpoint. So the only thing that you can do for your duty is to just fuck with them, personally. I mean, I think, that's because, there's no such thing as debate.
Within reason.
Yeah, but I mean, I think
Depends on the person.
a pretty quick device to use in that moment is like, do you think that hard work is the difference between somebody being rich and being poor? I mean, if that was the case, we would have gazillions of rich people.
Yeah, if that was the case, we'd have fucking, tons of rich roofers and cement layers and fucking tons of broke as shit CEOs.
You would have extremely rich busboys. You would have extremely rich waiters. You would have extremely rich cashiers. You would have extremely rich stock clerk attendants and shit. Car wash. The point is, it's so obviously bullshit. I think that's an important thing to say. Like, the difference between being rich and being poor is not hard work, because look around you. And for those that are like, abjectly poor, I'm feeling the flushness in my cheeks like rise up, and I'm trying not to get too mad. But like, I don't know, how do you guys combat that? I mean,
if you're talking about abject poverty, I mean, man, it is, especially if it's generational. Especially if race is an issue. I mean, it is an incredibly vicious cycle to get. You don't simply pull yourself up out of it by your own bootstraps.
I think another component too, when it comes to like a generational thing, at least I've experienced this with older members of my family, is that like when they were young, when you're talking about somebody who's, possibly in the boomer segment of generational stuff, when they were young, a college education pretty much did guarantee like a high paying technical job.
Right. And you could literally work your way through college.
Right. Exactly. And so as a result of that, they bring that life experience and that memory then to looking at kids who are in school now, or are applying to school, or just out of school, or maybe who didn't go to college or whatever, and they're applying that logic, and the reality is it's an incredibly different job market now.
Oh, yeah.
And there are a variety of structural reasons for that, but they see people, it's like, oh, why didn't you get a certain type of education, or why don't you spend your time doing it? Like, that's usually like, if it's not a directly racially coded thing, in my experience, like the idea of like people wasting their time usually relates in some manner to education. Yep. And so So, you know, the best, like, if they're reasonable people, like, you know, you can maybe take that angle about them and try to talk them through, like, their experience when they were young and, you know, what it was like for them to, like, try to get, like, a certain kind of set of technical skills that they could apply to her job. And if they're not reasonable, then, I mean, I don't know, they're gonna die soon. Like, I wouldn't worry too much about convincing them of something.
That's, yeah.
That being said, I'm sure otherwise your stepmother is a lovely woman.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Oh, this is a specific person.
Yeah, I mean, it's just...
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, she's great.
No, I mean, look.
My bad. Cut what I said. Fuck.
It's a specific person, but I mean, it's a not specific person, right? I mean...
Right, yeah.
It's a comfortable person, and comfortable people, I don't want to be too incendiary here, but comfortable people like the person you described hate to have not only their supremacy challenged, but their supremacy even defined verbally to them. They can't fucking handle it.
Yes.
They can't handle it. And I mean, you know, I don't think we do a good enough job on this show of like really talking about white fragility is really like, but I think, which we need to go more into at some point. But the concept between white fragility and black excellence is the same. Like, you know, it's just for the same reason that people that can work the hardest and be excellent at something does not necessarily mean that they're going to garner some sort of monetary remuneration from it. Yeah, I mean, we should probably discuss this further. Actually, there's a book that I've bought that I've been meaning to go actually read because I bought it, is Ben Burgess' book called Give Them an Argument. No, this is Richard Wolff book. Hang on. I'm trying to flex on Shane here. Look at me with my 2 books. I'm almost Shane. Ben Burgess, Give Them an Argument, A Logic for the Left.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that book. I wanted to read that.
So, I mean, in the sense that you can argue with these people, but ultimately you can't because they don't want their supremacy challenged because that's some of the currency that they have, you know, in lieu of their talent and skills and work ethic. So, I mean, fuck her. But okay, let's move on to another question. Here's one. Why do you consistently misrepresent how the financial bailouts in 2008 were conducted? I'll tell you exactly if you fucking DM me, coward. Let's go.
What an odd... Who is that from? That's really funny that a hater found his way to the Curious Cat.
I know. Well, does that mean that they listen? Like, I don't know.
That rules. Good. I hope they...
Yeah, no, that's actually kind of cool.
I hope you're listening to this. I hope you're giving us the money.
Subscribe to the Patreon, loser.
Yeah, so maybe you should do a post from the podcast account saying that whoever sent that question, if you want to hear your very long and detailed and serious answer, you're gonna have to pay $5 a month. Because it's a Patreon episode. Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't even. Okay, I'll read this. How? Well, this is kind of directed at me, or this is directed to whoever runs the Eat the Rich pod account. How come most posts I see are about taxation? Why don't I also see ideas about government investment in people? It's not. Next.
I'll answer that. I'll answer this. There's only so many hours in the day, okay? All right, folks. All right. This is hard to do. It's hard to put together and it's hard to do consistently, and we really love doing it and we're really grateful for the response. But there are some times where we get messages and things along those lines, and it's like, I don't know. Not every show or not every person can be the be-all, end-all answer to everything. Like, we bring our perspectives, we do our things to the best of our ability. We try to put out, interesting content, especially on Twitter and especially Chris. And take it or leave it. I don't know. I mean, I think on the show we talk quite a bit about the need for, a robust social welfare package and state. I mean, the nature of our show is to point out and identify problematic actors who, in one way or another, are working against the institution of those things. And by the way that we fund those things is through taxation.
Correct.
So, I don't know. It's kind of a circular thing.
Yeah, no.
I'm sorry if I came across a little bitter in that answer.
No, please be bitter, and we are martyrs. No, but I mean, a lot of the posts the whole point of the show is to try to point out some of the fucking insane things that occur in our capitalist Thunderdome, and to educate you and to try to give you some, as not that we're fucking experts, we're learning along with everybody else. We're just talking about it and trying to create a little bit of a platform. on which to talk about this stuff. And so a lot of the things that whoever runs the Eat the Rich account probably posts about is with taxation, is like just pointing out what could we be using our resources for that are societally efficient versus capitally efficient. That's the root of it. Should have thought about that about 2 minutes ago. Anyway.
And if you do want to invest, or you want to think about an investment that'll work towards a future, continue to subscribe to the Patreon.
Correct.
I'm getting mush mouth now.
Oh, man.
I'm not explaining why.
Oh, man. Is there a gas leak? This is a question. I don't want to answer the question, but I do want to say something that pertains to the previous part of the episode. How old are each of you? I'll just say for me, I'm 78. And how did you become BFFs? And we don't need to go into like the origin story, but I will say this. Earlier today, like I was saying, like I was feeling real shit, Super Tuesday, just the entire crushing capitalist apparatus just felt like it was encroaching on me. And joking around with my buddies, Shane and Chris here, like helped improve my mood immeasurably. And I think that's something that in our American work environment is lost, is just like having time to socialize, because most of our time is spent doing work, whether it's direct work for our employer or doing work at home to better our home lives. I mean, homework is labor, right? So spending time and carving out time, hopefully on your company's dime, to interact with your buddies it's an absolute pleasure. It's a real help.
And I'm 32.
It's I will be turning 30 this week.
Oh, yeah.
So probably by the time you're listening to this, I've crossed over into the age of unreliability.
Oh,
according
buddy.
to the new level.
Yes.
All downhill.
Yeah, I mean, to echo what Dwight said, I think we were lucky to meet each other through this online space and then extend that out into real life engagements and to form this. And it is potential, in that online world to find real human connection and find something enjoyable and hopefully that is enjoyable to other people as well. I mean, I'll say as well, I never expected it really to get to this place, and I'm extremely grateful to everybody who's contributing to the Patreon and everybody who listens to the show regularly and reaches out and stuff. But I'm also extremely grateful to you guys. I mean, I think part of the reason why we're still doing it is, like you said, in addition to the the nice response we've gotten, I think it's just nice for us.
Yep.
Yeah, it's fun.
It's
Oh, this is the only thing I care about. Like, I mean, was that not clear? This is the only thing I think about all day, every day. I'm like, on the train, not touching surfaces, trying to like write down notes about things I want to talk about on this and share with everybody. No, it's an absolute pleasure to be able to do this.
Yeah, so and like for me, like while I'm buying time as I'm like touching every surface possible and like also then touching my face, until that shit kicks in, man, this is what I'm spending my time doing.
So let's see here. This one's pretty simple. If Sanders is robbed at the convention, where are we meeting up? We've already covered this. Milwaukee, we'll be there.
Central Park.
Yeah. No. And for the jury who's hearing this, no, we're not going to reveal the source of that question. We're not snitches.
That's right.
Not snitches. We
not
we
fucking
have respect
snitches.
for our listeners. Yeah. So fucking subpoena us, bitch.
I'm just imagining having to listen to this in a courtroom.
Oh Lord. Hey, the jury should be so lucky, frankly.
Oh man.
Let's see, and we should just wrap up with maybe one more here. I'm not reading this. I'm gonna read it.
I'm really interested in the ones you're skipping.
No, I'm not. I'm not skipping any.
I can only imagine the stuff that my followers are submitting.
I think
I'm really sorry about that.
Well,
one of my favorite of Chris's bits is whenever somebody like cool or interesting that like comes on the show and sort of tweets about it or talks about it, and then people from your followers like jump in, and you respond like, "He's with me." I'm sorry.
Oh, dude, I love that.
Oh, I think it was.
So sorry.
I think it was Heidi like doing a tweet, and that fucking like Tiresias or whatever, the QAnon guy who thinks I'm a bot, started replying. I was like, yeah, he's with me. I'm sorry.
I mean, if you want to know one of the ones that we've skipped over, there's two in a row. I'm pretty sure it's from the same person. One says, "Hey, how's it going?" and then just says, "Salt or pepper."
bizarre.
I mean, whatever. We don't need to get into
I prefer salt, but I mean, I like them both.
Oh, well, salt is,
They're both necessary.
fucking DM me. We'll talk about salt. Yeah, okay, so here's an interesting one. Leftist interested in a career in economics that betters my community. Econ or business degree? It's an interesting question. I mean, I am in love with economics. I think it's an absolutely fascinating field, and if somebody just asks me to describe it, this is how I describe it: is that it's like the study of human behavior on the margin, like how do people make decisions, and I think that has been super helpful for me in just my life, is to like help to understand the economic side of things. But as I believe Richard Wolff points out frequently, they separated the econ and the business schools.
You're going,
yeah.
Yep.
So like the business school is where you learn how to actually do the stuff, and then the econ is where you learn how the things kind of work. And I think it's fucking perverse that the two are separated. I don't know.
I mean, if this person's asking for like a kind of like academic advice, like in terms of like what kind of school or whatever I'd go to, I would definitely say, as you just pointed out, part of the reason they separated it is because the econ departments often are filled with so much kind of like just market worshipping nonsense that it doesn't actually give you like a clear set of skills of even how to approach constructing a capitalist enterprise, so they have to make like a business department. But like in addition to that, I would say, there are always, in different places, there are always good people that you can go and study with. And the little bit of advice that I would give, that I found out in a very strange way myself, is that there are almost no Marxists in the academy, at least if you compare it to the weird picture that like the right tries to paint of the academy is filled with communists or whatever.
Yeah.
Often not really the case. But if you are looking for a space that might have people who are sympathetic to those ideas, or have written about those ideas, who work in those ideas, they're often not going to label themselves a Marxist, a leftist, a socialist, or a communist or whatever. Just look for anybody who has political economy. If somebody says political economy, I work in political economy, or I address the political economy of XYZ, that probably means they're bringing a left-wing perspective to it. So if you're looking around at different schools and trying to figure out where should I go, who's good people to work with, that's what you should be on the lookout for.
Well said. I mean, I suppose I should be explicit and explain that I did major in economics, and I wasn't a terribly good student. But one of the things that I really took away from it was, there was no kind of like heterodox explanation of markets and of political economy in general. It was just kind of like, hey, markets allocate resources to the highest payer. Great, next. And there was no discussion about that. And the kind of substantive stuff that I really found most interesting, aside from the kind of tenant organizing that I did, as well as like working with the municipality to, better things for student life, is like hang out with the kids that were occupying campus buildings to support striking janitorial labor. Like those were the kids that I really looked up to at the time. And, I didn't know that at the time. And honestly, it's only taken me until this point in my life to really define what, I guess, put labels to my convictions, but that I've been working towards my whole life. But this is probably not helpful. Do econ. For no other reason. I mean, all the kids in econ are just like weird, and like the business school kids are just objectively worse. If you want to, like, on a pure fun basis, do econ. Let's do one more and close it out here. Define yourself with 3 words. Nobody wants to do that.
No.
Oh, that's not. That's
eat the rich.
Bye.
Okay, here's one. Hello, my name is Al, and I go to UC Santa Barbara. I was curious if you guys can shine some light on how a government leaving capitalism in favor of communism could minimize their environmental impact, since so many capitalist practices are just harmful while still keeping productivity up. I ask in this way since so many capitalists make it seems like without industries like fossil fuel, the U.S. economy would hard plummet. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, this is obviously, Richard Wolff, Democracy at Work, broadly has been a hugely inspiring to me as far as identifying what could be a way forward as far as an economy goes post-capitalism. Because we've had the critiques for a very long time, but the question is, what do we move towards? And moving towards an economy in which the workforce democratically owns the resources via worker co-ops would create an incentive to reduce climate emissions, climate change and fossil fuel emissions, because why would it make sense if we own collectively the things that are being killed by our bad practices? Why would it make sense for us to continue that? It doesn't. It makes sense and is in the interest of the capitalist class to fuck up our resources and drill in national parks and shit because they don't pay the costs. Because they privately own the resources that are being used to exploit, are exploiting our natural resources. They don't pay the costs of it. We pay the cost, to be fucking clear. Like, who is going to deal with who's going to pay for instance, with COVID-19, with coronavirus? Who's paying for that? We are. That's $8 billion signed into law by Congress today, taken out of our paychecks. After, by the way, there was a fucking tax cut for the rich. So it is increasingly more our cost. So if we need to build a seawall around Manhattan, if we need to give fucking sunscreen out to everybody that lives in the Indian subcontinent or something, you know what I'm saying? Like, all of those things that need to be reckoned with when we're talking about climate change is going to be paid for by us. And so it no longer remains in any sense to have the resources privately owned by an extremely small group of individuals. If we want to have any incentive, of course, if we're talking about economics, we always talk about the economics of incentives. If we want to create an incentive for people to be preservative of our environment, it has to be through the collective ownership of our resources. And that's not to say state ownership of our resources. It means collective ownership of our resources, democratic ownership of our resources. If you owned a fucking factory, if you were a worker / owner of a factory in your town and you had a choice of whether or not to fucking belch pollution into the river or lower the profit margin slightly in order to dispose of it safely, you wouldn't pollute your own river. That's just a simplistic example, but just to brush a broad stroke for why it's important for us to allow capitalism to become extinct. It's just a no-brainer.
I have a brief one that I don't want to get into too much detail now, but this is like a very concrete thing, which is just like transit, not just of like people and workers, but of goods. Like, you know, one of the things that capitalism writ large does on an international scale is it'll seek out the cheapest thing it can, right? Whether that's labor or commodity or whatever. It'll find like the cheapest place it can and then calculate, like, again, with like, you know, huge transit costs, like transatlantic, you know, trans-Pacific like costs, right? Like to ship things overseas because they can make them, you know, per unit X amount cheaper in a certain place. And so a really concrete example of this is just like food and fruit. Mm-hmm. Like, you go to the supermarket and there's just like this huge fucking mound of berries, and it's like, where did all these berries come from? And most of the time they're not grown locally, you know, they're grown and produced and in, you know, giant agribiz manufacturing centers in like the global south, or like you know, particularly in the United States, a lot of it comes from like South and Central America. And so part of the thing that I think you know, a transition to a more socialist economy would do in terms of aiding climate change, right, is like you could have controls in certain ways to be like, well, maybe instead of importing apples from Chile because we can get them for X amount unit cheaper there, even though it costs there are all these other costs that then have to be borne, maybe we should just grow apples here. Or maybe there's just less apples at the supermarket.
Yeah.
Like maybe you don't need that insane variety during every season, right, to apples just perpetually be available. And that doesn't sound necessarily like a big thing, but when you know, multiply that towards a million different foodstuffs and other commodities that are shipped from all around the world, you know, you can drastically reduce the amount of pollution and trash and, you know, overproduction of goods, where, again, specifically with food, where you just end up in these huge supermarket chains. They have piles and piles of fucking produce that get thrown out on a weekly basis that are not consumed by anyone. And when they get thrown out, it's not only the waste of that particular object that could have been eaten by somebody, you have to account for, well, how much carbon was expended into the atmosphere to bring this fucking tomato from fucking equatorial belt to, Trenton, New Jersey Stop and Shop, and now it's just in the fucking trash.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like and again, you multiply that on a big enough scale, and you cut things down.
Not to mention like all the fucking zucchini that happen to be grow in the shape of a U and just we never even see.
Right, exactly. All the produce that gets discarded for ridiculous aesthetic reasons, where, like, honestly, if you're at the supermarket and you see like a half rotten vegetable, it's fine. Just eat it. It's okay. It's not a big deal. Even if it makes your tummy sick, it's one day of your life. Who gives a shit? It doesn't matter. If you buy some food and you leave it in the fridge too long, it's still fine. Just cut the outside part of it off. If you accidentally throw something off, just eat it. It doesn't matter.
We may not
None of it matters.
want to give the listeners bad health advice, perhaps.
Nah.
They're big boys. They're adults. They know what they're doing.
It's America. You get to make your choice, and you happen to be listening to me, so I'm telling you what to do. Eat out of your garbage can.
The one thing I'll say about this is like agribusiness needs to die in the current iteration. I mean, go to a farmer's market if you can and buy a single carrot and taste what a carrot tastes like, and you will be fucking blown away at what it's supposed to taste like versus like what the problem with like agribusiness and how they grow things is that they overgrow, there's got to be some fucking correct term of it, but they use the soil too much. Crops need to be shifted, crops need to be rotated. The same soil can't be used.
It's monocropping. Yeah. Monocropping.
The same soil can't be used over and over because it leaches all of the nutrients and all the vitamins and shit out of the soil.
So then you need chemical fertilizers.
Yeah, fucking A.
To then fucking grow this
You
stuff.
know when you go to a grocery store and you buy a bright red tomato and you go home and you cut into it and you taste it and it's tasteless and mealy and sandy, it's because it's not ripe at all. It's become red because it was sprayed with ethylene gas. That's how it goes from going the green natural state that it is, because they need to allow it to stay in a grocery store for longer, so they just give you the appearance that it's ripe. It's fucking disgusting.
In like areas where agribiz is big, especially again in like the heartland of the United States, right? The topsoil, like you're saying, is so depleted of nutrients because of monocropping that it's essentially nothing more than a sponge that has to be continually sprayed with chemical fertilizer. And the feedstock for most of those chemical fertilizers is ammonia. And the way we get ammonia is by oil, which, by the way, again, is running out. Google peak oil, and you're going to see, and you're going to find out that we're months away from a huge crisis.
Just pile it on, man. We're already in, we're in at least 2.5 huge crises.
I was trying to make a fun
It's my
end to
pessimism coming again. Shit. All right, we should probably just leave it at that. We've hurt them enough.
Stay cool.
Fucking stay cool, guys.
Stay cool. Just stay cool.
Stay cool, folks. I'm eating gummy bears, man. I'm eating nice red raspberry gummy bear. Did they have to spray that down with some shit, man? No. Ditch the fruit and vegetables, man. Just fucking, you got fruit flavored gummy bears. That's all you need. Hell yeah, stay cool.
Stay cool, guys.
All right.
I'm Chiquita Banana, and I've come to say bananas have to ripen in a certain way, and when they're flecked with brown and have a golden hue, bananas taste the best and are the best for you. You can put them in a salad. Grief? No, not yet, my dear. That greenish way you're looking means that you are ripe for cooking.
How about me?
No. When you are fully ripe, my dear, those little flecks of brown appear.
Me?
You're most digestible, my friend, delicious too from end to end. You can put them in a pie, any way you want to eat them. It's impossible to beat them, but bananas like the climate of the very, very tropical equator. So you should never put bananas in the refrigerator. Bananas are a solid food that doctors now include in baby's diet. And since they are so good for baby, I think we all should try it. Oh! See?